Good morning, Devils fans. I want to say thank you to this guy for having a different first name, as today's spotlight is on Brendan Smith. Born February 8th, 1989, finally someone born in the 80s, to parents Deidre and Lester, as well as having brothers Rory, who from what I understand is a very good lacrosse player, and Riley, who is now a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. All three of the boys would play in the same midget team growing up with hockey, and then would move on to play for St. Michael's Buzzers in juniors. Brendan would participate in the Canadian Junior AHL 2006 All-Star Game and would win silver with Canada East at the World Junior A Challenge. At the 2007 NHL entry draft, Smith would be taken 27th overall by the Detroit Red Wings. He would go on to play 3 seasons at the University of Wisconsin-Madison before signing his ELC with Detroit in May of 2010. He spent his first year pro in the AHL before making his NHL debut November 17, 2011, playing a little over 19 minutes in a loss to the San Jose Sharks. He earned his first NHL point the very next game on November 19th with an assist on Justin Advocator's goal and an eventual win over the LA Kings. After being sent down to the AHL and then recalled again, Smith would pot his first NHL goal in his 5th game on March 2, 2012 against Josh Harding in a win over the Minnesota Wild. In 2014, he'd play his brother Riley in the Stanley Cup Finals when the Red Wings met the Boston Bruins. After being drafted in 2007, Smith would remain part of the Red Wings org until 2017, playing in 6 NHL seasons, where he would total 15 goals, 52 assists for 67 points in 291 regular season games, and 2 goals, 4 assists in 27 playoff games. As a pending unrestricted free agent, Smith would be traded February 28, 2017, to the New York Rangers for a 2017 third and 2018 second. They would extend him for 4 more years with a $17.4 million contract. Smith would reportedly show up to his first Rangers training camp out of shape, and with him and the Rangers struggling, he'd be put on waivers and be sent down to the AHL after not being claimed. Shortly after arriving there, he got in a fist fight with a teammate during practice and broke his hand, ending his season. He would end up earning his spot back the following season with the big club and even found himself being played at forward, something he hadn't done since juniors, due to a crowded blue line. He eventually was moved back to defense the following season. In total, Smith would play 4.5 seasons as a Ranger, scoring 14 goals, 29 assists, 43 points, and 235 regular season games, and no goals, 4 assists in 15 playoff games. As a free agent, he would sign a 1-year, $800,000 contract with the Carolina Hurricanes, where he'd score 4 goals, 4 assists in 45 regular season games, and 1 goal, 3 assists in 14 playoff games. On July 13th, 2022, he would sign a 2-year, $2.2 million contract with the New Jersey Devils, finally landing him here. In his first season as a Devil, Smith wouldn't score a goal, notching 5 assists in 60 regular season games, and again, no goals, 1 assist in 3 playoff games. So on the ice, although having played at wing, Smith is clearly here to play defense. Obviously, he hasn't scored a goal as a Devil yet, and his generating of offense in the O-zone is fairly non-existent. But instead, he helps facilitate that play with getting the puck out of his own zone, and that's about where his contribution stops. Defensively, he's actually quite good with retrieving the puck in his own end off of dump ins. He's not really preventing you from entering the zone, but he does a good job of preventing you from entering with possession, at least. Unfortunately, even with that, he still gives up a decent amount of chances, especially on a give-and-go type play. But if he can force a dump in, he's good at retrieving those himself and moving the puck out to exit the zone. In total, he brings a different defensive game than most of our other D-men. I think it's because of this he did end up seeing time in the Carolina series. They're very much a dump and chase, play along, back up the boards type team. And that's really where Smith games is at his best, as opposed to, like I said, actually preventing actual chances in zone and all that, or playing the rush defense itself. So I at least understand the thought process a little bit. But he does play, an overall solid enough defensive game to be a fine 7th guy. But that's really where the buck ends for him at this point in his career. Oh yeah, and he does fight a lot. You might actually find out he has more time in the box than actual ice time at points in the year, just due to that and other penalties he is bound to take. Off the ice, we know Smith was brought in as a vet leader for the room, and the dude, at least from his interviews, seems very charismatic and well-spoken, so I could see him at least having the draw of the other guys in the room for when he speaks. He's definitely someone you like listening to. Brendan, on a bit more of the personal side, met who is his now wife at the bar she worked at on the campus where he played hockey in college. They'd marry in 2017, and a year later would have their first child, baby boy Nolan, in June 2018. 2 years later, June 2020, they'd welcome baby girl Ryan. It's spelled Ryenn. Hopefully I did pronounce that right. Going forward, Smith has 1 year remaining on his deal and is likely going to be the 7th D for a majority of the season at best. He'll likely get starts at points throughout the years just to keep him fresh, especially when the coaching staff wants someone in to throw some fists around. I could see him being waived and even sent down when Nemec is ready to make the jump, whenever that happens to be, either start of the year or end of the year, just because, again, we have a fairly stacked blue line and there's just no real obvious spot outside of the 7th D or even, again, being sent down guy. Again, he was brought in to be a locker room leader vet, and he can definitely do that more than capably as a healthy scratch night in and night out. I find it very unlikely he has extended here after this season, although I never say anything is impossible. But the man has over $31 million in career earnings, so I think if this was his last year, maybe in the NHL, I'm sure some team would take him. He's more than capable enough, at least at this point from what we've seen, that he probably has at least another 1, maybe 2 year contract out there waiting for him. So top 3. Number 3, I was actually, just before I started recording, had this as my number 1 spot, but I kind of bounced back and forth between having a non-Devils thing at number 1, so it ended up at number 3 here, even if it might actually be my favorite, and that's going to be his punching his teammate at practice. But it's because of all the circumstances around it. He just signed a very big deal with the Rangers, came into camp out of shape as anything, and then had to be waived and sent down, but still being paid his full salary. If anything, he was an overall major detriment to the Rangers, and then he punches one of their prospects down in the AHL, breaks his hand, and he's out for the season, still getting full pays. Absolute credit to this guy. He was a devil in the waiting. Number 2, it's going to be Game 3 of the second round of the playoffs. Like I said, he didn't make it into the Carolina series. This was actually the game that we won, and it's because of that very memorable assist he had on that Jack Hughes goal, the second goal of the game, where Jack went across the seam, back up to the blue line on a beautiful pass to Smith, who looked like seemed to have an obvious one-timer or wrist shot chance, but this guy doesn't score goals. So what does he do? He actually makes the smart play that a lot of defensemen seem to not want to do, and he went back across the grain, back to Jack, who is actually a goal scorer, who then spots the goal, and that's really when we went off and racing in that game. So I'm not saying Brendan Smith's the reason we won that game, obviously, but it was a very memorable goal. It was an awesome play, and it was good on him for that one. Number 1 thing that might stick with me the most with Brendan Smith in his time here, we'll see what this season comes, is really his media interviews. Again, I was really blown away, especially in his very first one when he's brought to the team, and just how well-spoken and articulate he is. So I'm glad he's bringing that to the room for the boys, and hopefully get a few more instances of hearing him with the media, although it's the healthy scratch for most games, I'm assuming. He probably doesn't get too many opportunities at that, so we'll see. But that's really going to do it for today. It's the start of the work week, so I hope we all make it through it all right. I'll see everyone tomorrow morning. Let's go Devils!